She was a Virginia State Trooper who left the agency to become an ATF agent. Now retired from the ATF, she's here to talk about the dangers she encountered and the unusual circumstances of working undercover. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. You know, we used to have an app, and it was a very popular app. And then, guess what? We couldn't hold a candle to our Facebook presence. How many people have the mobile Facebook app already installed on their phone? How many people use it on their computer? Make sure you follow us. Make sure you like us on our Facebook page. Just search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast, and be sure to send us a comment to one of the posts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Connecting with us from Georgia, we have retired ATF agent Jennifer Eskew on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. She's also a Virginia State Trooper, and she is author of the book Becoming Fire. Jennifer, thanks for your service, number one. Number two, thanks for being a guest on the show and talking about it. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for thanking me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And by the way, you spent a lot of your career, and this is just my opinion only, you spent a lot of your career with the ATF. The ATF is one of the agencies that had a reputation of being real police. DEA was another one. I'm not going to name the ones that didn't, but in Baltimore, the ATF, they were running gun, and they were out there working.
Right. We, and I got to work with a lot of the guys that were in Baltimore, too, back in the day. When I first started with ATF, because that was part of our field division at the time. And I think with ATF we were looked at as street agents because we knew that what we called our bread and butter was working with our state and local partners and being involved with them actively on dealing with anything violent crime, particularly shootings, guns and drugs, the trafficking of the weapons from the south to the north and well, all over the place, and as well as arsons and bombings, and that involved a lot of motorcycle gangs, but also a little bit of the mafia, a little bit of everybody.
Right. A lot of people don't consider that. But you started your career with the Virginia State Police. And by the way, I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. And that's where I spent most of my childhood. My dad was a career Navy guy. And Virginia State Police had a great reputation back then. That was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And their reputation, as far as an agency goes, it still's got a good reputation.
Yes, it does. It does. I started... applied to them in 1985, and I got hired in January of 1986. So early on, I was one of the earlier females to come on with the agency. They had hired their very first female in 1976. She was the only female in a class of 72. When I came on, there were three of us in my class. We've all talked about it, or several of us have talked about it since then, and we're like, how many do you think there was of us? We'll sit there and add them all up, and it'd be like, 22 to 25. There couldn't have been more than 25 actual female state troopers, but there were 1,200 men. So we were like, we're a little outnumbered.
Yeah, a little bit outnumbered. A lot of testosterone where you worked it. And so in our agency, we had, and I started in 1980, we had a lot of female officers, and they worked everywhere. And by the way, people loved, we had a former commissioner that made fun of them, but I owe my life to a lot of these female officers. And it wasn't a matter of how big they were, how strong they were. When I needed help, when I was in a fight for my life, they came in and they grabbed the hand. And meanwhile, some of the muscle-bound macho guys would never show up. They would never, ever be on a hot call.
I guess some of us, we just really like to fight.
Yeah, that's
might be putting it a little rough, but I think from everything I hear from a lot of my fellow people that I worked with over the decades, they always tell me, and I've always heard from them, and I hear it back, that they always felt like they could count on me being there, and that they never had a question as to whether I was going to show up. One of the better compliments I ever got on the job was from a former Marine who'd been in Vietnam, and he always told me, he said, if I'm going, I want you going with me because I know you won't leave me.
Right.
And I said, well, that's what I'm not supposed to do. I'm going to be there. I said, I'm going to get you back. I said, we're going to do what we got to do out here. And I always had it. I tell everybody, I got lucky early on in my career, even though I did encounter some people who were probably not thrilled about having females on the job, and had some issues. For the most part, I got lucky. The men who I worked with were very good to me. They worked very hard to help me out and to learn and to get beyond my rookie days and my rookie mistakes. And they taught me the right way to do things so I didn't get hurt, and so I did improve and continue to work that way. And a lot of those guys were Vietnam veterans,
right.
And they had been in bad situations overseas. They'd come back and been in law enforcement for 10 to 15 years, and they were very helpful. One sat down with me one night, and he said, the reason I'm going to help you is because you're not afraid. He goes, and you take accountability. So, and he spent one night working with me and teaching me stuff. This was past FTO days, and he just wanted to show me things, and I credit him giving me permission to stop being so polite to everybody, particularly people who might really hurt me, and do my job.
Right.
Be hands-on and do my job. What I'd been taught, but at the same time you were intimidated because you didn't want to make anybody mad.
No.
It was like, and you have to get past that. You have to get to where you can just get your work done, get your job done, and deal with the situation. And he kind of gave me that permission to go do my job and do it the right way. And
now,
treat people the right way, but do my job the right way and get it done.
We have a lot in common.
I've always credited him.
I was trained by a lot of Vietnam combat veterans, and we had a few Korean War veterans or command staff, and they were some of the best police ever because they taught these basic principles, and the basic principles was respect people everywhere you go until they change the tone of the conversation, and then there's no backing down. If you feel like your life is threatened, you take action, and you be quick about it. Don't wait. Don't play pity-patty, whatever it is. Give a dog a bone thing. If you got to hit someone, hit them, and never lie about it.
Right. Yeah, and you don't lie about anything you do. This is what you did. You articulate it. You explain why, and you stand by it. There's no time to be waffling and changing and creating a new story because you're not out there for that. You are out there to do your job and be honest about it and explain why you did it. And if it turns out that why you did it wasn't good enough, then that'll have its own repercussions. But if they come back and look at it and go, yeah, we can kind of see it from that way. We see why that happened and what this is, and it's logical. It had to happen that way. And like I said, I'm grateful to all of those people that worked with me and helped me out at the beginning because it gave me that little boost of confidence, the fact that people weren't looking at me as this little college kid who just bebopped up in their office and was like, hey, I'm...
Were you a college kid, Jennifer?
Yeah. Well, I came on, I was 23. I was like 5'6", maybe, I don't know, by the time I got in the office out of the academy and everything, I might have been about 120.
Yeah.
I was a little bit heavier than that when I got to the academy, but I wasn't really big.
They run you into shape. By the way, where'd you go to college?
Oh, Old Dominion.
Same here. But see, the difference between you and I was I didn't graduate. I left quickly. I tell people all the time I majored in drinking and had a minor in sociology. I got a 4.0 on my major.
I was majoring in the same thing, and a little more pizza. I did a lot of the martial arts programs down there.
Well, then we'll take a short break. We're talking with Jennifer Eskew. She's retired ATF. She's author of the book Becoming Fire. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to talk about her undercover career in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Return our conversation with Jennifer Eskew on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Jennifer is retired ATF agent, former Virginia State trooper, and she's author of the book Becoming Fire, and she's contacted us from the great state of Georgia. Before leaving the Virginia State Police, which some people do, and going to the ATF, by the way, the Old Dominion days, I've got to go back very quickly. I said I was a lousy student, and I found out at the police academy I was actually a good student. And then when I sobered up, I became a really, really good student. And all of a sudden, when things became important to me, I paid attention. So when I wasn't across the street in a bar at Friar Tuck's and I was actually in class, I probably would have graduated.
I love Friar Tuck's. It was the same for me. When I found things that truly interested me, I put all my focus and attention on it, and I excelled at it. And when I was in the police academy, and then furthering my law enforcement career and everything I've done over 32 plus years, it was, I really did great. I took, university courses. I got a master's degree, all those things, and I made mostly A's in everything because I took to it. I enjoyed it.
And I guess as we get older, we become more serious about what we care about. I've got to say this. When a lot of people, and I almost laugh when people say, yeah, I'm going to go to the police academy, and then I'm going right to homicide. I'm like, nah, that's not quite how it works unless you are a golden boy. When you graduated from the Virginia State Police Academy, were you a road trooper?
Yeah, everybody is going to be a uniform road trooper when you get out. And back in the day, the fastest you could get to be a special agent was probably 7 years, but the average was 10 to 12 years, and it could be longer because evaluations, testing scores for that particular promotion, as well as a panel interview, those kinds of things mattered. Experience, all of those things were going to be added in before you could get promoted. But I realized when I was in the State Police Academy, there was a point where it just hit me. I want to be a criminal investigator. I want to be a special agent. And I'm asking questions about it, and everybody's going, learn to be a trooper first. And I was like, I got you. I just want to know how to get there. And they were like, learn to be a trooper first. But I kept asking people because I knew I wanted to be a special agent. I wanted to investigate the felony crimes. And so I was really focused on that, and I realized it was going to be a very long time getting there.
Right.
I was trying, though.
Well, here's the thing.
One of the routes was the undercover.
In Baltimore, one of the things, and I'm not saying this as a sexist position, but female officers had an advantage, and they were quite often sent in undercover work because they posed as the girlfriend for the informant or the undercover, and they were there to gather information. And also, let's be honest, a lot of the drug dealers, they didn't view females as potentially being police. And so it was not, and I'm not saying this is negative, it was a macho world, for a lack of better words, and they didn't consider women to be a threat. Did you find it to be a case for you?
For the most part, when I went undercover and finally got into it full time, they did not see me as the threat. They didn't recognize, what they were dealing with. And so in that process of not knowing that, they let me know too much. They took me in. I gathered a lot of intel that way. They got in my car with me. The next thing you know, I'm with guys who are trafficking firearms and bringing in the drugs, and they're in my vehicle, and they're talking to me about buying guns for them so we can take them to New Jersey and do these different things, and how much crack I can start selling for them during a week. They're telling me a lot of their business, and I'm learning more and more about things that they've been involved in the past, and different places where there have been homicides where they've had to suddenly leave. And I was learning, their names, that sort of thing, because they weren't recognizing that I'm the person wearing the body wire, that I'm the person that's got a gun, that I've got a badge. they saw me as, hey, she seems to have some money. She's not too stupid. She's got a vehicle. Yeah, she's perfect.
Right, and they wanted to impress you. Let's be honest and say they wanted to impress. And I'm not saying this as a negative. I sometimes, and I'm going to ask you this informal question. I think sometimes the female officers that did better were the ones who stayed in uniform. They had a tendency in our department, and I'm generalizing here, to use these people and without thought of what their lives would be like afterwards.
No. Well, like I said, they didn't, state police came and asked me, I'd been on 3.5 years at the time, and if you count the first half of the year, was nothing but academy. So 3 years in uniform on the road, and they asked me if I'd like to be a full-time trooper, a full-time undercover trooper, and I didn't realize I was the very first female to be actually going into the full-time position. It was going to be a 2-step increase in pay, which is like $80 more a month or something. It wasn't much. And I'm like, yes, I'll take it. I knew it was a way to open the door to eventually becoming a special agent with the state police. Plus my love life had gone to HELL in a handbasket.
We can say that safely.
I was kind of really in a slump, and I was like, this is great. I get to change names. I have a whole new life. This will be great. I'll start over. And I didn't realize I was going to start over in a housing project and be surrounded by gangs, and I'd be there 24/7 for 6 months. But that was my very, here you go.
You got thrown into the fire from the frying pan.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I got there, and I had a topside agent, great guy, CB Wyatt, Charlie, as I always call him Charlie. And we also worked with a detective named Scott Klein. And we got an informant or two, and I got introduced around. And I started buying drugs from, everybody. Eventually, I'm buying crack, I'm buying cocaine, I'm buying heroin. And then I started buying drugs from the Mennonites. And that was, different. That was like a side gig. They were like, hey, you don't mind going over here to the Mennonite farm and buying this stuff they're selling, and we'll figure out what it is. And it was clandestine-made Valium. And that was such a weird world because I bounced between hanging out with the gangs to showing up at a farm at a Mennonite house, and it smells like buttermilk, and I'm in there buying drugs from them.
Yeah.
And they're telling me I can't call it drugs or medicine. I have to call it herbs and minerals because that's what the DEA told them. And I'm thinking, okay. So it was just things like that, and I was getting in. The state police was just really cranking up and getting into this thing of the prescription drug, the diversion,
the pill mill stuff.
And so I started helping out with that, going and buying a lot of prescription drugs from people when I had time in between. So I was just buying drugs for everybody from everybody.
We're going to take a short break on that. We're talking with Jennifer Eskew. She's retired from the ATF, which we'll talk about an undercover assignment that went bad, her transition to ATF, which included undercover work and posing as a hit person. And she's author of the book, Becoming Fire. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to take a short break. I promise you, we will be right back.
Remember when free meant free? No charge, no credit card information needed. Well, a place like that still exists on the internet. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show website, letradio.com. Where everything is free, including the podcast, episodes are available after airing on radio. The website is letradio.com. That's letradio.com. Where free means free.
Return conversation with Jennifer Eskew on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Jennifer is retired from the ATF. She's a former Virginia State Trooper. She's author of the book, Becoming Fire. Part of your career, Jennifer, in both Virginia State Police and ATF was working undercover. We talked a little about transition between buying drugs from Mennonites, working in housing projects with known street gangs. The dichotomy has got to be mind-blowing. But part of your assignment was you worked undercover, and you had a particular undercover deal that went very, very bad.
Yeah, I had one of the gangs, we knew that they'd been involved in a homicide in Richmond with one of the guys. And then I had another gang, and we knew that they were out of New York, and that there was one of the family members had been involved in a homicide of a security officer in New York. So we knew the people we were dealing with. And, of course, everybody was armed. They all were armed. You saw the guns. They talked about guns. We knew that they were buying guns and trafficking them, and we were trying to get all that documented and trying to get in touch with ATF and work with them on that. We knew that everything was trafficking with the crack and all. So we were out running around, and we were right near the very end before we were going to bust out of the operation and wrap it up. And we were really close to the very end. And we've been out buying dope all day, and there was like a tension in the air, and I don't know, it was just a bad day. And so as things are going along and everything is happening, the next thing you know, for some reason, out of the blue, one of the people we're dealing with, and his name was because he had like 26 kids, and all of the males were drug dealers for him from ages 13 up to like 33 or something. They were all drug dealers on the street for him. And one of those was wanted for the homicide in New York. But as things were going on that day, suddenly tells people that me and the informant were either snitches or narcs. We don't know why he got that in his head, but he did. So it started making everything difficult on us, and now we're having to watch our back and trying to kind of avoid him and his sons and just sort of see what's going on, and maybe that's just it'll calm down and figure out where that got started at. Meantime, we had other things going on and doing some deals. And as the night wears on and everything is happening, we're wrapping up, and I'm finished. It's just me and the informant in the car, and I'm like, I have lost the guys. I said, the battery must be dead in this wire. Let's go to a payphone. Let's find out what's going on. And we've had a few run-ins with Ford's sons that night.
Correct me. You say the guys, you mean your surveillance team that was watching?
My topside guys, my guys. Yeah, Charlie and Scott.
And what we're going to do is I'm going to bleep out the name because we don't do trials by media, and I don't believe in giving any publicity to bad guys.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, the family, and they were a family. The family was out running around, and we kept running into them, and I kept kind of having brushes with them. And they don't seem to be mad at me, but they're really, really angry that night. And I don't know what's happened with them. They're acting, I tell people, it's kind of like poking a hornet nest, and they're acting like that. They're really upset. Well, we run into the youngest one. He's 13 years old, and he is just really upset. He wants me to give him a ride, take him to his older brother's apartment to drop him off. I'm thinking, well, maybe this will get me back in good with them, so I'll do it. And he's talking about the fact that they're going off, that they're upset, and that they've got guns, and he's raging on about it. And he's like, somebody's going to get killed. Somebody's going to get killed. Well, we don't get any information, any details out of him. He won't tell us anything, and we don't know who they're mad at. But I don't want to be the focus of whatever's going on with them. And I don't, we're like, something's wrong, and we're like, we need to stay out of whatever they're mad at and just kind of figure it out from the outskirts, not be around them anymore. But as the night goes on, we saw them driving away, going someplace. We're like, all right, don't want to deal with them anymore because something's wrong with them. I'm out with the informant. We're still out buying drugs from other people. And then finally, like I said, we lose our topside guys. I don't know where they are. I think the body wire's dead, so I'm not really in touch with Charlie and Scott. It's getting late. It's dark. It's cold. We go to a payphone that's like way outside the outskirts of Waynesboro, Virginia. And normally I get called back right away when I'm using the payphone, and I don't get a call back. So I try again, and I'm paging them, and I don't get called back. So I wait. I try it again, and I don't hear back. And it's like, wow, it's like 15 minutes. This is unusual, and it's making me nervous. Just everything felt wrong that night. And when I do get called back, I'm so happy to hear them. And it's at that point that Charlie, who's with the state police, Charlie Wyatt, he said, there's been a shooting in Stanton. Well, Stanton is maybe a 18-minute drive from Waynesboro to Stanton. And the city of Stanton, that's where they had a female undercover that was living with me at the undercover apartment. That's where she worked on the streets. So I realized she's not there. She wasn't involved. It's not around her. And it's like, wow, okay, who? And they said, we don't know why. It's this college kid. They shot him 5 times in the chest. And we're like, who shot him? And they said, we don't know who. And all of these things are just coming together, and we're trying to figure it out. And then that's when I'm learning that the last time I saw that particular family running around together and stuff, they're in the vehicle that was seen in Stanton at the shooting. And now I know who's involved and what all they've done and what's happened. And I'm telling them what I know. They start putting that out, and now it's a huge manhunt is ongoing to try and locate them and their vehicle for this shooting. And then it's a lot of search warrants, a lot of arrest warrants. Everything is going on. It's just really, really rapid. And it's just really tragic because Dickerson, he's a college kid, and he was the wrong kid. He wasn't who they were looking for. But they shot him and killed him, and it just was a horrific night because, you know, there was just so much going on, and I go into it in the book by kind of just tracking the timeline of that night from all of my police reports and all of my drug buys that day and all of the different run-ins with people that we had and things that were done and said right up until this point, and then how things turn out later in the court with that particular family and their involvement. And it was one of those things that it hits you so hard.
I can imagine. It sounds like it still bothers you. And here's a question I have. And by the way, I was lousy undercover. I'm a great surveillance agent. I was a good topside person, but when it came to undercover stuff, lousy. There are still incidents in my head where I think if I could have done this, I should have done this, they'd still be alive today. Are you thinking at all? I know this is typical survivor's guilt, that we could have done something different. We could have wrapped this up. They'd never been on streets. We would have arrested them. They'd still be alive today.
I will probably always carry that. When I talk about this, and I'm sitting here right now, and I'm not going to cry. I'm trying not to. My cheeks always get flushed, and I always get that feeling, and my throat always gets kind of caught up because you always go back and you think, what if we'd have done this? And what if I'd have done that? And when I was writing about it, I went through every scenario all over again, everything again. I dragged it back up, 30 years. And it was like, I can't, wow, I need to, and there's just nothing more. And there's nothing else I could have done.
And by the way,
you would have never known what was going there. And
what you say is hindsight is 20/20. There's no such thing as future vision. And by the way, I tell myself I'm not God. I'm not Superman. I did what I could do. Sometimes it's all you can do. We're talking with Jennifer Eskew. She's a retired ATF agent, which we'll talk about in a few moments. She's a former Virginia State Trooper, and she's authored the book Becoming Fire, which we will talk about in just a bit. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. I promise you. We'll be right back.
Get your free e-book on tips to improve your health. They are tips you can start using today, and most will cost you nothing. Plus, the e-book is 100% free. Download the free e-book at lethealthy.com. When we say free, we mean free. Get the e-book for free today at lethealthy.com. That's at lethealthy.com. Again, the website is lethealthy.com.
Return conversation with Jennifer Eskew. Jennifer is a retired ATF agent. She's also a former Virginia State Trooper. Virginia State Police, I think, is the actual term they use. And she has authored the book Becoming Fire. When I say Virginia State Police, they have a great reputation when I was a kid growing up. And I'm so old, Jennifer. I remember Virginia State Troopers in North Virginia driving 73 Plymouth Furies with 440s or 400s, and you could see the leaves suck up under the dash when they gave it gas. It was they passed everybody at a gas station. It's great driving
I'd have loved to have driven one of those. I love going fast.
They were such good cars.
Absolutely love driving fast.
There came a point, and by the way, to quickly go into, there's still things that pop up that I find difficult talking about. I don't want to talk about with people, and I appreciate you spending time talking about this undercover thing, but there are things I'm thinking, man, if I could have done things differently, I would have. But there's no magic pill where we make things go back. There's no red or blue. It's like just reality, and unfortunately, some people pay the price in this line of work. You eventually left the Virginia State Police and went into the ATF, and that a lot of it is plain clothes. They're not a uniformed agency to speak of, and you want to continue your role in undercover work. Am I correct?
Yeah, I continue doing undercover work I was in the Bristol, Virginia field office over in southwestern Virginia in Appalachia, right on the Tennessee border, and in fact, I worked in that office for 25 years. That's where I stayed as an agent and during that time. But I continued doing undercover off and on for years, along with just regular investigations on a variety of things, and eventually got involved with like arson and explosives type work. But yeah, that was part of it.
And we don't tend to think of the rural areas of the United States as being violent, but that's where most of the meth is. That's where most of the organized crime is. That's where a lot of the outlaw bikers live. And it's not the big cities where a lot of stuff goes. By the way, a lot of stash houses are out in the suburbs, out in rural areas, because there's a lot less eyeballs.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot that goes on in the rural areas. Plus, everybody's got an interstate. Everybody's got an airport. Everybody's got a tractor-trailer coming through. Everybody's got, something going on. And there's always going to be criminals when they find a place that they can set up and not be as easily targeted by law enforcement. They find it easier. It was really easy between Washington, D.C. and New York and Atlanta and Nashville and Charlotte, North Carolina, for the gangs to be running up and down the interstates coming right through our area.
And by the way, we talk about Richmond, Virginia. That's no joke with organized crime and gangs. Norfolk, Virginia is no joke at all either.
No, not at all.
And a lot of people tend to think, they don't even know Norfolk exists. Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, the whole Hampton Roads area, there's, I think, about 2 million people there.
Oh, yeah.
And the worst traffic I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Now, when I was a trooper, that's where I worked at as a uniformed trooper. While I was undercover, I eventually was brought back into Portsmouth, and that was in Portsmouth's heyday of heroin and crack.
And by the way, Portsmouth used to have the
shootings and the stuff, and and it was rough. And
got to ask you about your career working undercover. I have in my notes that you posed as a hit person. By the way, is there ever anybody that is not a hit person that is not police?
I don't know if anybody ever hires one.
I've never heard of them.
I guess there's a few. I think there's a few, but it's really odd as to how many people end up contracting an undercover officer.
Where do you even start that procedure? I think I'm going to Google how to hire a hitman and not be a police. Where do you find registered hit people? They're not around.
Apparently somebody tried to run a dark website on that one time, and that didn't work out well for any of those people either. And it was just like, I don't. You're finding somebody to do that for you just to hire somebody. Do you know them or do you not know them? Because you're probably hiring an undercover, but
probably. By the way, how did you get thrust in this position of posing as an undercover hit person?
I was I got horses. Once I got with ATF, I got a horse, and I started hanging out at a barn and taking care of my horse on the weekends when I wasn't working, and it was just my time out, my peace of mind. And I get a page on my pager, and it's from a very reliable informant that I knew. So I call him back. I'm like, what in the world is he bothering me for on a Saturday? But it has to be something good because that's just how he was. And anyway, I knew it had something. And he's telling me, he goes, hey, I'm here with so-and-so and so-and-so. He wants to talk to you about whatever and everything. And he's got something he needs you to do. He needs you to take a hit on somebody, and I told him you were the person to do it. And I'm like, whoa. You know I got to get this on recording. He goes, I know. I know you want to talk to him, and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, he's talking code, and I'm on the phone, and So I told him, I said, look, I'll speak to the guy for a few seconds just to catch the voice, but tell him no business over the phone, none. And from that moment on, we were locked in with the guy. He had done federal prison time for trying to steal 38 kilos of cocaine from the FBI.
Uh-huh.
And
that's not bright, by the way.
Yeah, he'd gotten out. He'd been out a few months. That get-rich-quick scheme didn't work, and he was looking at another scheme of get-rich-quick, and he needed this person taken out. And so he was looking for someone, and he thought that the informant that I was working with would do it for him. And he told him, he said, no, I can't. I got my daughters I got to look after. I got this, I got that. But I know someone. And then he told him, he said, well, it's a woman. And she kind of is friends with some of the friends that we all kind of know out of the Chicago area. But she lives down this way, close by, if you're interested. And this guy was interested. And it was like, okay. And so we end up talking a couple of times on recordings on the phone, just briefly, just to get introduced and to agree to meet. We then met in person. I actually had him buy me dinner. So I ate seafood while all of the surveillance team sat in the van, and it was really cold. It was in February.
Eating beanie weenies in the van while you had seafood.
Yeah. I was sitting there with my fried shrimp and deviled crab and hush puppies, because you can crunch those over the body wire.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to mess with the people that are working with you a little bit.
You got to.
And but I wouldn't talk business with him, in a restaurant with all these people around. And then we finally get to a private area where we can sit and talk. And he was very serious. He brought me a down payment. He brought me a map to the person's house. He actually used colorful markers to do the map. Let me know where the guy lived, last name of the guy that he wanted done. Promised to bring me a gun on the next meeting. We talked different ways of how he wanted it done. He suggested piano wire, and I'm like, no, because I'm probably not going to be strong enough, and that's just not going to, And then he brought up something about using a syringe, and I'm like, no, because poison doesn't work that way, and they'll find it. I said, can we just make this look more like maybe he picked up a hitchhiker and got robbed and found himself dead? And he's like, oh, that would be great, And I said, well, then if that's something you want, then we can work that out. And he was just all for it. But he went into so much detail of why he wanted the guy dead and how much money he was going to make out of this. And he was going to become a millionaire.
Yeah. We're running out of time. Let's talk about your book, Becoming Fire. Is that available now for purchase?
It is going to be available November the 18th is the launch date. Becoming Fire, and the subtitle, Chasing the Passion to Protect, Serve, and Love, a true crime memoir. And it's by me, Jennifer Clark Eskew. My foreword is by Joe Kenda.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm really proud of that. And I got some great blurbs from some great people that have been in law enforcement or have been involved in the true crime documentary type world. And so I wrote the book about my career with the Virginia State Police, from coming off of being a farm kid in a rural area to going to the academy, becoming a trooper, my mistakes, and then my successes and the things that I dealt with, and then my first few times trying undercover and then getting into undercover full time. and just all of the things that I went through and the different kind of the cases and the people I dealt with and the people I worked with.
That's called
I mentioned
Becoming
earlier.
Fire with Jennifer Clark Eskew. Jennifer, thanks so much for your service and thanks for being a guest on the show. Both very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
This was the podcast version of the nationally syndicated Law Enforcement Talk radio show, and we are so glad that you decided to join us. Big thanks to our guests for telling their story on the show. 2 simple things you can do. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com. That's letradio.com. And be sure to follow us or like us on Facebook. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Talk radio show. And be sure when you see a post that we put up that you like, that you resonate with, that gets your attention, be sure to share it with your friends. We'll be back in just a few days with another great episode of the show. See you then.